Well, hello and welcome. My name is Jacob Jewett, and thank you for joining my my twice weekly live cast where I answer questions if people have questions, and also am at this point a bit of a talking head. And I like to talk about IT stuff. I like to talk about the industry. I like to talk about training and things like that. And if I can help people out, that's my number one goal of this channel. So yeah, anyway, I only have one live viewer right now, and that's probably myself, because I always have the live stream up so I can make sure it's going through okay and all that good stuff. But you'll see disarray behind me because I am actually in the process of moving. I'm being relocated by my company, which I very much am happy about. Me and my family are moving across the country from Bakersfield, California to somewhere in New Jersey, and so it's a very big change for us. It's a fun change, but well worth it. So you know, just the opportunity and getting to continue to work with the company I currently work with is of course a plus. So you know, working with great people, you can never in that. So yeah, I don't have a ton to talk about tonight. I figured I'd go live just to make sure that I keep this thing going. And if you're new to my live streams or my videos in general, I do the live stream twice a week. I do it on Sunday and Wednesday of every week, and I do it from 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, until I'm done. So tonight might be a short one. Depends on if anyone hops on and asks any questions. Typically, if someone hops on and asks any questions, I am happy to stay on as long as it takes to answer as many questions as I can. The other thing you'll notice is I'm a little bit disheveled as far as facial hair and all that good stuff. Every November I do the no shave November, and I do that and I include my hair and all that stuff with that. I do that out of support of people that are currently battling prostate cancer or have battled prostate cancer. It's affected a couple of my friends, and it's also it took my grandfather, or was one of the things that took my grandfather when he passed away. So it's something that I've always kind of tried to support. I also do my best to, you know, during Save the Tatas and all that stuff, support women's breast cancer awareness and stuff like that. So I'm very much on my wife about making sure she checks her tatas every year, that she gets her physical done every year, and I'm very much on myself about getting my physical done every year, as well as making sure I check the boys downstairs. So I'm kind of joking about it, but it really is no joke. I've always viewed our bodies as like time bombs. There's weird things about our bodies that, you know, no one really thinks about. We all go through life thinking that we're somewhat invincible and, you know, do crazy crap when we're young. And I still do some crazy crap now that probably could possibly shorten my lifespan. But our bodies are time bombs, and you never know when they're going to go off. And fortunately, there's things that we can do, like prostate exams and of course mammograms and stuff like that for women, to basically detect things before they get way serious, and hopefully not too aggressive and all that stuff. So I've known my share of people that have had breast cancer, or women that have had breast cancer. I've known my share of men that have had prostate cancer. And it's definitely two things that, although I may not be able to help out as monetarily as I would like to, it's something I still like to show some kind of support for. You know, I have a friend, not going to totally disclose it right now, but I have a friend, and his family is currently going through the beginning stages of dealing with cancer in the family that was just detected. So if you see one of my live streams and I come on and I'm shaved bald, it's, you know, of course, out of support for my friends, and, you know, doing it, you know, whatever I can to help them out. So, yeah, anyway, so that's that. Again, I don't have a whole bunch to talk about this time around. In the past, I've talked about career as far as, you know, leveling up in IT. I've talked about different things that were going on. You know, so I guess I could talk about some vulnerabilities. Currently, the major vulnerability that's out there is called Foreshadow, and that particular vulnerability is a processor-related vulnerability. It's also a core operating system vulnerability. There's a way of patching it. There's a Microsoft patch that you install, and then there's two registries that you have to edit or enter into the Microsoft registry, which if you're not comfortable doing that, that could be a task, just because a lot of people I know are not too comfortable with working with Windows registry files, and I'm not typically one of those people, so it's not such a big deal for me. But yeah, so that's one of the major vulnerabilities out there right now. I guess I got a topic there, and I can actually go along those lines. Yeah, that might work. So I guess what I could do is I could show people on this video the Windows registry and how to kind of protect yourself, and how to work with the registry, and you know, get an understanding for it. So if you've worked with computers any period of time, you know that there's ransomware, which is of course a pain in the ass when it gets on a computer. Aside from ransomware, you also have you know, the typical malware infections and stuff like that. And I guess I could take you guys through, I guess I could take you, once I format my screen here, I could take you through the process I go through to clean off of a system, right? Or clean a system of some kind of infection. So my standard MO when I discover a system that has been infected by malware is the first thing I'll always do is I'll always back up the system. There's some tools that I use that I really like, and I'm going to make myself a bit of an idiot because I don't think I have them just sitting here right now. But there's a couple of tools that I like to use when I work on a system. First of all, when I work on a client system, if I go to their location and I pick up the machine and I bring it back to my my home office at this point, because any system I work on is a side project, because I work for a corporation. Of course, we don't work on home systems. So when I work on home systems, it's something that I do on my own, and typically I operate the same way I do now. I operate now the way I operated when I had my own business. So I had a policy when I owned my own business of how to handle customer machines, and this is basically how I would do it. So if you went to like a Best Buy, or you went to Office Max or Office Depot, where they offer computer services, they will typically take in your machine, do a diagnostic, say that they know or don't know what the problem is. If they can't fix it right there, they'll ship it off to their repair center or something like that, and you can expect the machine back in like 1 to 2 weeks. The other problem with that is CompUSA used to do this before they went out of business, but Best Buy still does it, is they'll suggest that you've backed up your system or that you have backups of your system, but they won't do it automatically. What they'll do is they'll offer the service and they'll charge you to back up your system. They'll charge you a nominal fee, typically $19 to $29 or something like that. Of course, that adds on to your overall fee as it is when you're getting your system repaired. As far as my company was concerned, when I ran my own business, I would offer that service for free. So I would take in a customer's machine, and the first thing I would do before my technicians would touch it, when I say, please realize when I say the first thing I would do, this was something I taught my employees, and so they operated on the same MO as me. So as soon as we took in a machine, the first thing that we would do is we would actually back up the system. So I like personally, I use Paragon software, and I'll see if I can pull that up for you. But that was my tool of choice. There's plenty of other tools out there, but the success I got from using Paragon was unrivaled. It works. It's worked in certain situations. It's worked in certain situations where other things did not work, and it's been able to recover things that other systems or other software was not able to recover. It's not a free piece of software. It does come at a fee, but in my opinion, it is well worth the fee. Every time I've ever used it, I have literally it's made its money back in just like crazy amounts as far as like being able to save my ass. If you've watched any of my previous streams, I'm very about CYA. I'm very about cover your ass. And so for me, doing a backup of a customer system, and I do have the site up for you. So it's, let me go to demo here, and I don't have my studio thing up, so I will assume that this is going to work. Yeah, there we go. So the site is called Paragon Software, and they have a tool called Disk Manager, Hard Disk Manager. And typically I use either Business, or I try to get their next level up, which is Enterprise. As you see, this is, again, not cheap software. They do have multiple different versions of it. So you have the $6.99, which has a lot of the features, but again, it's for like a small business. If you want to go to where you're helping multiple customers, that's going to be a little bit more. But again, it literally pays for itself. If there was one piece of software that I wish had some kind of subscription plan where you could actually just do a subscription for the software instead of paying like this large fee, this is a piece of software I wish would have that, just because it does a great job. It saved my ass multiple times. It saved my customers' asses multiple times. And it's just a great piece of software. So I know someone in the near future might watch the recording of this live stream and go, oh, well, there's free tools out there. I agree, but Paragon software, when I've had an issue with, let's say I backed up someone's drive and then I went to go restore it on a new drive and it failed, and that, you know, the old drive died in the process of extracting the files, and if I had any problems, I was able to get a hold of technical support, and really they know their software better than I do. So you know, that 3-tier support is just, it's unmatched. I mean, being able to call someone and get an answer when you're trying to help a client is a good thing, right? So my MO was, when I brought in a customer's machine, the first thing I would do is I would back up the machine, and it didn't matter what we did. It didn't matter if we were adding hardware to the system. It didn't matter if we were going in there to try to clean out a virus or some kind of malware. It didn't matter if we were just installing software for the client. The first thing that we always did is we backed up their system, and we never charged for that feature. Okay, the backup process was basically part of our diagnostic part of the service. So, and I'll talk more about diagnostics here in a second, but we back up the system, and the reason why I did this is it helps me in multiple ways. Number one, if you're building a system for a client, or let's say you're taking their computer and they bring it to you and they say, oh, I don't need anything on that. Just wipe it out, start new. I don't want to deal with anything. I don't need anything, so just do it. I can't tell you how many times that's bit me in the ass in the end, right? Because you know, you'll have the client, they'll say that, and then they're the first client that comes back and goes, oh man, my wife is so pissed. You know, all those, I had a ton of pictures on that computer, and now I can't get them, blah, 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 blah. Well, you know, you're kind of shit out of luck, buddy. You know, that's not exactly great customer service. If I could, in turn, change that around and go, hey, don't worry about it, man. We got backup. We'll get what we can off there for you. It's just, it's so much better to be able to cover your ass than it is to kind of be up a shit creek when, you know, you get that once in a gray moon customer that comes in and they insist, after they told you that they're not worried about any of the files and just, you know, give me a clean install. You know, they'll come in and they'll insist that they never said such a thing and you're responsible for their files being lost and blah, 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 blah. You very easily protect yourself from that by backing it up. Does that open you up to other issues? Yeah, but there's ways of mitigating that, and I'll explain it. And so I might spend a little bit of time on backups. So the reason why, the other reason why we did backups is even after you take care of the client and all that stuff, and you know, you restore their files and you do what you can to make sure that the machine that they get back has as much information as the previous machine or the machine before it was infected or anything else happened to it, is you have that backup. And with Paragon software, you're able to open up the backup file and you're able to pull the files from the backup without restoring it to a disk. So that's another advantage. So you can literally pick and choose which files, or you can have the client pick and choose which files they want, and you just put that back instead of like some of these other free solutions. What happens is you'll make a disk image, so you'll copy the information off the old hard disk and you'll copy it to a new hard disk. And the problem with that is you don't really at that time have the ability to kind of tell it, oh, I don't want these files, right? So it works really well when you're trying to recover files. The other thing about backing up every system that you touch is if you do it right, it covers your ass as far as bills, right? Or as far as customers agreeing to pay the bill or not, right? So what do I mean by that? Well, in the past, I've had customers that have come in. When I had my storefront, I would have a customer come in with a, you know, hey, I want a diagnostic on my machine. And we would explain to them, hey, the diagnostic that we perform is $35. We do that because we have people that come in They want us to do a diagnostic on their machine, and then they'll go to someone else, tell them what we said, and then that person basically has a head start on fixing the machine. So we don't do free diagnostics. Free diagnostics is bullshit. Excuse my language, but it is. Because I'm paying someone to do a diagnostic on your machine, I need to get paid for that diagnostic. Now the way I took care of the diagnostic is, number one, when we backed up the system, we didn't charge jack diddly squat for the backup. When we perform the diagnostic, the customer is informed that the diagnostic is like $35 for the diagnostic, but if we tell them what's wrong with the system, and we can back it up by like, hey, this is what's wrong, this is what we see, we can fix it. If they stay with us and we end up being the people that fix the system, then the fee for the diagnostic is waived. Okay, so I don't bill them for, like, I start billing them for the time that I'm working on their machine, but I don't count any of the before time. So the diagnostic to me is the before time. So if I said, I'm going to charge you $35 an hour, or I'm going to charge you $35 flat fee to do a diagnostic on your machine, if you have me do the work on your machine, that diagnostic is no longer charged to you. I am now going to charge you for the time that I actually spend on your machine. And in the state of California, a lot of technicians don't know this and they try to get away with it, but in the state of California, you are required to give your client as close to a quote as you can on what repairs you're going to do, and the basic time that it's going to take you to fix it. So for example, if you're working with a client and you think it's going to take you 2 to 3 hours to fix the problem, if you quote them 2 to 3 hours to fix the problem and it starts looking like it's going to take you 4 to 5, you have to, by California state law, you have to call that client and let them know that unfortunately it's going to take us more time. Do you agree to spending more time on your machine? Likewise, if you do a quote for them saying that you're going to replace a hard drive, and in the process of fixing their computer, you realize that they have a video card that's going out, you can't just switch out the video card, whether you charge them for it or not. You have to call the client and inform them that you're going to charge them or not charge them for a new video card, right? You have to tell them what you're putting into their system or what you're taking out. And you have to do the communication with the client before you actually perform this service. Now, you may think to yourself, well, if I'm putting a free video card in someone's system, oh, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is it's not your system, and therefore you have to inform the client. Now, most people will not have a problem with you putting a free video card in their system if that's what they need. You know, that most people out there will go, oh my God, thank you. But it's very seldom you'll get that one that is so happy and is like, well, I didn't ask you to do that. And then next thing you know, you're in legal trouble, right? So again, cover your ass with paperwork, and I cover it with backups, right? I know I'm spending a lot of time on the backups portion of this discussion, but the other thing that opens a little bit of legality, and you can cover this through your contract agreement when you have a client sign, that you can include in the contract that says that you back up customers' information. And I'm getting kind of off track. Basically what I was trying to say before is another reason why I back up the system is because if the client comes in and I've done the diagnostic on their system and I've done work on their system, and all of a sudden they say to me, well, I'm not going to pay the bill, right? I've done everything that I've agreed to do. I've given them the accurate quote. I've charged them at or below the quote, okay? And then they tell me, oh, I can't pay. I'm not going to pay. Or they look at it and they go, well, I don't agree with this repair. Even though you show them it's fixed, Are you happy with it? They're not happy with it. Well, some companies will give that person a refund, and they'll give the system repaired to that client. So that client will get their computer back and basically walk away scot-free. I'm not for that. If my employees put the work into it, if I put the work into it, I want to get paid for the time I put into the system. So if a client comes to me and says, I want a refund, great, bring your system to me. Well, why do you want to do that? Well, if you want a refund, it's in my contract stipulation that if I work on your system and you want a refund, then I'm going to restore the backup I have of your system onto your system, and you're going to get it back exactly the way you brought it to me. I'm not going to do free work for anyone. My time, my employees' time, and everyone that works with me, their time is valuable. So if that's the case, I understand you're not happy, but since you're not happy with our work, let me put you back into the place you were at before you came to us. That's fine. You want your money back? I'll happily give you your money back, but I'm taking back my work. You know, it may be a little off base, but the point is if I'm going to put the work into it, I'm going to get paid for it. And you can't make everyone happy, but you know, hey, if you want the refund, great. I'm going to put the system back exactly the way it was when you brought it in. So that's another reason for the backups. Now, what I was going to, before I cut myself off and went off base, I do that a lot, so I apologize. But the other thing, there's some, you open yourself up to some legality as far as backing up, right? People don't want you to back up their system, or they are afraid that if you take a backup of their system, that there's a possibility that you will let their information out there. Their information will be accessible to other people. Their, you know, credit card information, and what porns they were watching on Pornhub or X videos or whatever the case is. You know, you're going to blackmail them or something like that. That's not the case. If you're an honest business owner, and as I've spoken before in previous live streams, I'm all about integrity. Integrity to me is everything. If you don't have integrity, you have nothing, right? So as a technician, your integrity is what makes or breaks you in this industry. So the way my contracts were written said that I would take backups, but I would protect that information as best as I possibly could. So I'm not one for wanting to get sued. The last thing I want to do is get sued. The last thing I want to do is piss off anyone to the point where I would get sued. So the way I operated on my backups is when backups were performed on a customer's machine, the machine itself never touched the internet at the time of backup, okay? Not only that, the backup software I used, in this case Paragon, has a bootable CD. So you put that CD into the customer's machine. You can do it as either a bootable CD or a bootable USB drive. You boot up the machine in a what they call side boot. So the local operating system on the machine doesn't boot up. You're booted up into a pre-installation environment. You would use the Paragon software to boot up into this environment, and then once you were booted into it, that's when you would do the backup. Now the way I did it, or the way I taught my employees to do it, was number one, we always used external drives. So we had a set of drives that were designated as being backup drives. So they were big. They were like, at the time, 2 terabytes. If I was in business right now, I get the biggest drives that I can find, probably 4 terabytes, right? Because they're going to have a lot of information on them. Those drives never touched any machine that was connected to the internet. So they didn't touch our workstations at the office. They didn't touch the secretary's front desk. They didn't touch, any system that was connected to the internet. So everything was disconnected from the internet before this was done. Paragon was booted up with an external drive attached. And what I would do is I would not associate actual client names. Okay, so if I had a client or a customer that came in, I never associated the name of the client or the user to the backup file. What we would do is we would take a barcode scanner and we would barcode scan the serial number on the actual hard drive itself. And that was the only thing that identified that backup file. So if we were to, for example, switch the hard drive in a customer's machine, we would notate in our software, or in our customer service software, that the hard drive was a certain serial number, and that would of course relate or tie to the actual backup file. Now, the backup file was never available on our file share. It was always on external drives, and the external drives were kept in a safe. And so they never touched anything with the internet. And that safe was behind 2 locked doors, and it itself had its own locked door being built onto the safe, and the business had a security alert system that was monitored. So for someone to get to someone's data that I had backed up in my company at any point, they would have to go through 2 locked doors. They would have to go through a security system, a video camera system. So they would have to get through all that, and then they had to go to the back of the office, the furthest point in the office, to get to the safe. And then they had to get through the safe. Now, I know a lot of great people that can get through stuff, but come on, really? So that was kind of how I did my backups, and we always had a chain of custody for the hard drives that stored customer information as far as backups. And if I at any time felt that one of my employees was doing something with customers' data that they weren't supposed to be doing, if they, for example, were pulling up customers' data, I once worked for a company where my coworker would go through people's folders, like if they got a computer in that had viruses on it, or they would get a computer in that obviously the customer had a lot of porn on it. He had a separate drive that he would copy those files to. And I always told him, dude, that's not the right thing to do. And I personally reported him quite a few times until he finally got caught and fired. Yeah, that's a no-go, right? The customers' files, your integrity is everything. So if I ever saw my employees doing that at any time, they would instantly be fired. So that just never happened, right? So after we did a backup of the system, we would then take the system and we would boot it up to see what was going on. Now, there's a couple of places that you can check to see where infections are. My system at this point is really clean. So if I show you some stuff here, more than likely you're not going to see, well, my hope would be that you would not see anything really bad on my system. I guess there's always a chance for that. But you could look at Task Manager. Of course, it opens on the wrong window. Let me pull it down here. So you would pull up Task Manager, and you can go through the list of items on Task Manager. And so typically what I would do is I would have a separate system set up, and if there was anything in Task Manager that I did not notice, like threw me for a loop, I would do a search on Google on what is this, okay? Like if I'm going here and I'm like, oh, PSI service, what the hell is that, right? So I would, in this case, it has to do with a Corel because I pay for all my software. But I would go to the system or to the actual file, details. Oh, it was right there. I was blind as a bat. But if I go to the actual file, I'll see here that the file is PSI service, right? So what I would do is I would open up Google. I'd open up Google and I would say, okay, hey Google, okay, what is PSI service.exe? Okay, and through a search, you know, most of these places you can find like file.net. Well, what is PSI service? You go in, you see, okay, other people have found this. What is it related to? Oh, it's related to Corel. Well, I have Corel. That's not a big deal. Let's move on. So I go through, look additionally for other things. This runtime broker that's always there. You see Steam and Stream Deck and all this other stuff. But yeah, you just go through and find it, right? Sometimes you won't find it here. Sometimes you'll have a scheduled task that goes off when you boot your machine. A lot of these malware systems like to do that, right? So one of the things that you could do is you could go to msconfig. So type in msconfig in your search box. And what msconfig will do is it'll show your boot process, right? It'll show, this is where you can get into diagnostic startup. Diagnostic startup only starts like things that the system absolutely needs to get to the point where you can do diagnostics, right? So it'll kill unnecessary drivers. You can do a selective startup where you can tell it what you want to start up and what you don't. And of course you got normal. But if you go to boot, you get to see what operating system you choose. If you have a multi-boot machine, this is where it's going to list the multiple OSs that you can choose from, right? You can go to services and again go through the list and go, okay, these are all the services that are going to start when my system starts. Well, maybe, you know, the next time I start my system, you know, I really don't want, let's say, for example, I really don't want iPod service to start up. So you'll select that and you can hit apply and then it'll ask you if you want to restart. You can also go to startup, and if you open up Task Manager, because they moved where this was, you can actually go through and see what things are actually starting up when you start up your machine. Okay, and this will tell you all of them. Well, like, okay, well, I don't really use wallpaper.exe anymore, so I'm going to disable this. So the next time I go to start my machine, the last thing it's going to do, sorry, that's my wife calling me. When I go to start my machine the next time, the last thing that it's going to do is it's not going to start that wallpaper 32, which is basically a animated wallpaper program. So, you know, I can do that, or in Glary Utilities, you know, that's another one. So basically what it is first thing you want to do is you want to stop the infection, whether it's malware or something like that, from starting up. You want to stop it from it being able to continue on doing what it's doing. So once you do that, once you boot your system in an environment that is free of the actual infection starting up or the malware doing weird crap to your computer, you can use other tools. Now at this point, hopefully, if you start up your machine in like a diagnostic mode, you're going to lose connectivity to the internet. Matter of fact, one of the things I would suggest that if you're trying to clean an infection off of your machine, one of the first things I would suggest is you disconnect it from the internet. And you may be asking yourself, well, Jacob, how am I supposed to do these searches? How am I supposed to do, how am I supposed to get files on my machine to scan the machine and stuff like that? And my answer to you would be a USB drive. A USB drive that is only used for that purpose, right? Because you don't want to infect other machines and stuff like that. So, you know, for actually doing searches on those applications that I said that you may have to figure out what they are and what the association is, you would use another machine. So I don't only have my computer that I'm sitting here doing the live stream off of and doing demonstrations off of. I have a Microsoft Surface, I have another laptop, I have a couple other machines literally within a couple feet of me, right? I also have an iPad. So typically when I'm working on someone's machine, if I'm trying to look up file services and stuff like that, I'll look it up on the iPad. At the same time, if I know that I have to download certain tools, I'll download those tools on my laptop that's there in front of me, totally disconnected from the machine that is actually infected. Now, another question you may be asking yourself is, Jacob, well, if you know what tools that you're going to use, why in the hell wouldn't you just have them already on the USB drive? Why would you have to download them? Well, the problem is there are so many vulnerabilities out there that are published daily. Okay, vulnerabilities are like, the cat that walks down the street with its tail in the air and it's in heat. Just about every other male cat's going to try to hit that, right? So when there's a vulnerability that's actually, when there's a vulnerability that's known, just about every hacker and their mother, if they know that they can exploit the vulnerability, especially if they're like from Malaysia or not Malaysia, but from areas in the country where they, you get those emails that like, oh, I just fell into like $56 million and you can have a piece of it too. Just send me $150 so that I can get the money transferred to you. Those kind of emails, right? Anyway, the thing is people that make money off of compromising other people's machines, they will hit that stuff like crazy, and they're always trying to find the way around, right? So they may use the same vulnerability or the same infection, but they'll make little tweaks to it. So maybe that your antivirus or your anti-malware software or the protections you have in place, they're hoping to do what's called a zero-day attack. They're hoping to attack you when you're not ready for the attack, right? So like your antivirus hasn't been updated, you haven't been doing Windows patches, things like that, right? So that's what they're trying to do. So the tools that counteract these malicious attacks also have to be updated quite regularly, right? So a lot of them actually time out. A tool that I like to use, which is called Combo Fix, that actually times out if you have it more than 48 hours or something like that. Like the file itself times out if it notices it's on a machine or it's not been downloaded recently and stuff like that. And when you try to run it, it'll actually delete itself before it actually functions. There's other tools like Malwarebytes. Malwarebytes, you can download the actual installation file, and not a whole bunch of that changes so often, but the definitions file that comes with that does change often. And so what you'll need to do is you'll need to download not only the installation file for Malwarebytes, but you'll also have to download the latest definition file so that if you're working on a machine that's offline to the internet, you can install Malwarebytes, and then you can also install the definition file that you got from Malwarebytes. The same is true for like any antivirus software. Typically, you don't want to allow it to connect to the internet when it's infected. You want to take it offline. You want to download the definition file and apply the definition file without being online, okay? Because typically what happens with any kind of infection, whether it's malware, whether it's ransomware or anything like that, the first thing that stuff tries to do is it tries to call home. So every time it's connected, it'll either call to a compromised server or it'll do its best to kind of spread itself. So that, again, is the reason why you disconnect your machine from the internet when you do detect a infection. And that's any infection. Any infection that you notice on your machine or your customer's machine, the first step, the very first step of any kind of remediation is disconnect that system from the internet as soon as humanly possible. Because any infection begets more infections. So there's that. Okay, so some of the tools I used a suite of them. So like if I went to Google, one of the things I used was Combo Fix. This works on some machines. I think they updated it finally. The site that you get from is Bleeping Computer, and they have it out for, Windows XP, Vista 7 and 8. I don't think they have it out for Windows 10 yet. This is a private project, so a lot of times they don't have the latest operating system out until like later. But it is a good tool. As you see, it's updated frequently. Last time it was updated was the 8th of this month, which is the 14th, so it's a little under a week ago. So again, this file does time out. Aside from that file, Bleeping Computer itself is a free website, and it's totally awesome. And it's very good at letting you know what's going on out there. It lets you know what's going on as far as infections. It lets you know what's going on as far as latest industry stuff. It is a site that, as a technician, you probably should be visiting quite frequently. So Bleeping Computer is a trusted source. Don't hesitate to go there. If you're really wanting to get into security and start learning about that, the other one that you're going to want to check out is Nist.gov. And this is the government standards of technology, but it's also where you can go and literally see all the top infections and the latest stuff that's been released, right? So where is it? Publications, energy. Oh my gosh, I have it actually saved as my location, but History Digital Archives, blah, blah, blah. It's on here somewhere. I'm just not seeing it right now. But they actually have a full library of, let's see if I do this. Yeah, there we go. Is it Cyber Framework? That's probably it. No, I got it on here somewhere. Got a lot of things on here. Nist Security School. It's not updated right now, but what I'll do is I get the link on the description of this video. But there is a section of this. If I could get resources, is it resources? Where are you hiding? Oh my gosh, I am so bad right now. I usually, again, go right to it. So major programs, publications. Where is it? Nist. Oh my gosh. Anyway, I'll get it published so anyone watching this video after, because I currently have no viewers, will be able to see it. But Nist is like the place to go. There's a couple certifications you can do and stuff like that. Bioscience, cybersecurity. Are you under here? Computer Security Resource Center, is that it? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm like lost on this right now. Recent news. Anyway, it's on here. You'll see. Withdrawal request on lightweight crypto algorithms. Oh my gosh. Anyway, yeah. So I'll publish that out there, but I'll get it on. I'll get it on the site. I'm just drawing blanks right now. But anyway, so that's Nist is a good place to go, and then of course, Malwarebytes. Malwarebytes is another good site. It's good to buy the software, but if you just need to do a real quick detection, usually what they do is let you download the free version, so you can do a trial, and you can actually clean out a machine. The trial will only work on that machine for 14 days. So if you want to use it past that, be aware that you're gonna want to buy it. But this is an enterprise level software now. It's actually pretty good at what it does. So Malwarebytes is another tool I use. So typically I'll do combo fix, and then I'll follow it up by this. And usually Malwarebytes does a great job of cleaning things out. And typically after I'm done doing Malwarebytes, I'll run combo fix again, and then I'll wrap around to using a tool like Vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities is another good tool. This is they have two versions of it, a pro version and a free version. The free version does a pretty good job of checking your startup menu and all that stuff. So I use that tool here. This is Vulnerabilities here, and I usually keep it up to date, but it will go through and check for things that do not belong. It'll also check other things on your system. So I haven't scanned this in a while, so I'm pretty sure it'll find a bunch of crap that I don't currently need, but it does a great job of cleaning out. I haven't personally used it to clean out an infection, but I've used it to do like the cleanup work after I've cleaned out an infection. So a lot of times when you use like Malwarebytes and you use like combo fix, it'll clean out the actual files and sometimes the registry entries that are associated with those files, but it will you know, when you use combo fix and Malwarebytes, they'll leave a lot of like remnants behind. So you'll see a lot of like things in the registry that are abandoned keys and stuff like that that are just left behind. They're not associated with anything anymore, but it really makes a mess of your registry after you've like cleaned out. So I started this conversation basically talking about the registry and about how some people are uncomfortable using it as like getting into it and getting down and dirty with it. And I'm not so worried about that, right? So to use the registry, or to get into the registry, if I go back to my demo here, what you can do is you go into your search bar here and you type in regedit. Okay. Windows will ask you to verify that it's okay that you use it. So UAC, or user access control, will jump into play and will say, are you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, because I'm the boss, you know, even though I'm full of crap. You'll see that you have different key layers here. You have classes, root, you have current user, local machine, users, current config. Basically, anywhere in the registry, you can really fuck it up if you give it a chance. You can mess this up. So that's why you do your backups before you do anything. You always back up. Always back up. A seller is always selling, right? You, as a technician, you always back up. So one of the other things that you can do, if you did a backup and you just want to make sure that you have another backup, what you can do is make sure you're on the root of the registry, and you can go to where it says export. And when you go to export, it'll ask you to name the file, and I can name the file before, hit enter, and by doing that, I am backing up my entire registry. You will see that this will take a little bit to do. It will take a little bit to do because it is literally everything that makes up Windows as far as the registry is concerned is currently being backed up to that location I told it to do, which was in Documents. So if I go to Documents, Documents, and I go to before, you'll see this climb. So this is currently sitting at 396 megabytes of storage. If I refresh it, you should just use the damn key function. F5 is the refresh key function if I ever freaking use it. But in the process of opening this, my backup finished, right? So there's my backup. That's the backup of the whole registry. Now let's say you're like, okay, well, that's great, but I don't want to reload the whole registry every time I do something. Let's say I go down here to one of these keys here, and I click on ARJ, if I could say it correctly. I can actually right-click on this, and I can export this as well. So when I export at that level, okay, I can say before 001, and so before I actually work on that key, I've just backed it up, right? So if all else fails, let's say I go here and I go, oh, this has to do with 7-zip. Well, screw you, I'm just going to do whatever. Like, screw you, I'm going to tell you what I want you to do, and I'm just going to put a bunch of bull crap in here. Well, if I do that, that's in there, and when you do a change to the registry in Windows, the effects are immediate. So that is now part of the registry. Well, Jacob, I've screwed up. How do I fix it? Well, you just go to File, you go to Import, and under Import, there's your before 001. You double click on it, you say, yeah, I want it, and there it is, it's back. Okay, so when I used to go to school, or when I used to teach in UEI and Kaplan, you know, you were told that when you showed students how to showed students how to navigate through the registry and how to do things in the registry, you were told very specifically that you know, be careful, it's dangerous, it's It's only as dangerous as you allow it to be. So if you go in and you make a change, make sure you back up that change before you make it, right? Back up the original key before you make it. As you saw with the registry, there's a fly, sorry. As you saw when I worked on the registry just now, if you back it up before you even touch the key, then you can basically go crazy with the registry and not worry too much. And you know, I have yet to see anyone mess up the registry so bad that it was unrecoverable. I mean, to mess the registry up so bad that it's unrecoverable, you got to be a special kind of stupid. And I say that, and I know that sounds mean, But I say that because if you're following proper procedure as a technician, you're not going to get yourself into a situation where you're going to get that deep in trouble, right? You've done what I've said. You've backed up the system. You backed up keys before you've done anything, right? I'm going to show you the greatest tool ever, the greatest tool ever. And 9 times out of 10, technicians forget this tool. It's a great tool, and you should use it, because half the time we go to a client and the first thing they say to us is, it's messed up. I don't know what's wrong with it. It's just not working. And so then we sit there and we try to go through a bunch of crap with the client and basically get the answer out of them. And if you're not good at communicating with clients, what are you going to do? You're going to end up, not being able to communicate with the client that well at all, right? So what are you going to do? You're going to talk to the client and you're going to go, hey, well, what was the computer doing? What was it? What's happening here? What's happening there? Blah, 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 right? Well, the problem with that is what happens if the client can't tell you? Well, I can go through Google and I can do a bunch of searches. I can do all this. I can do all this great crap and look like I'm busy, right? Or I can show you the greatest tool on the face of the planet as far as being a technician. And if I told you that this tool could solve a lot of the issues like right off the bat, or at least get you to the solution right off the bat, this is the tool. And it's taught as IT or Technician 101. This is the first thing, one of the first things you learn about, and people forget about it very quickly. Okay, watch this. This is so cool. So I'm going to take you back to my demonstration. Okay, so very, very simply, this is a tool that everyone forgets about. If you right click, usually on any version of Windows, but if you right click and you go to computer management, okay, you can either do that, or if you're on an older computer, if you just go to the file, your file explorer, and you go to PC and you right click on it, well, it's not there, so it's making me look like an idiot, but there's multiple places where you can do it, and I just gotta get used to this version of Windows. But let's go to the original one. So you can do this multiple ways. So you can go here and you can go to computer management, or you can go here and you can go to a much more powerful tool, which MMC, boom. It'll ask me, hey, are you sure you want to do this? I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, I want to do it. And the first thing that you should do is go to File, go to Add Remove Snap-in, and go to Event Viewer. Event Viewer is the first tool that you learn about as a technician, and it's the last tool that any technician goes to for an issue. And it should be the first tool that they go to. Because the great thing about this is you expand this, and you'll see that under Windows Logs, you have 5 main logs. You have an application log. You have a security log. You have a setup, and you have a system. The 3 main ones are these ones right here: application, security, and system. These other ones are nice to haves, but the 3 that are huge is application, security, and system. You go to these, you go to application. What is it going to do? It's going to tell you about issues with your applications installed on the system. Okay? This is half the battle. Half the battle is finding out what the hell is going on with your system. Okay? Oh, I see that I have an error here. It's error 100, and it has to do with my name being already in use, right? So it's going, hey, you already use this. In this case, it's Bonjour service. So I'm with, this is an Apple service, and it's saying, okay, hey, dumbass, you already had a computer named Jewett the Ripper at one point. And this computer is called Jewett the Ripper, so I'm just going to name it Jewett the Ripper 2. So when you look on Apple and you see Jewett the Ripper 2, hey, that's this computer. And it's going to show that time and time again, right? And it's going to show it in many different ways because there's many different ways of identifying this computer. Okay, I can go further down and I go down to Windows licensing. If you've ever had a client say to you, hey, I opened up my Office 365 and it says that I'm not licensed, or it says that I need to go online. Well, the error is logged and you can go down there and actually see what the error is. Any pop-up you get is going to be logged. If the system crashes, it's going to be logged. Security. You go to security, it's going to tell you when the system was logged on to. Okay, it's going to tell you when certain things were tried to access. It's going to keep a track. It's going to keep a track of most of anything that's being accessed, right? So in this case, there was a blank. It's probably me when I was trying to log on. I accidentally hit the keyboard and it says, hey, an attempt was made to try to do a blank password on this account. Thought you should know. Well, gee whiz, it's here, right? The other thing is system. System is great. You ever get that client, or maybe you haven't yet, but let's say you get someone that comes to you or you're talking to someone at like a computer event, or you're just talking to someone in public and the first thing they say to you is like, oh man, my computer just blew up yesterday. Oh really? It did? Yeah. I took it to Best Buy and they say I need a new hard drive. And you're like, oh really? Oh yeah, it happened with no warning whatsoever. Guess what? It happens with a warning. So if you come to a system, that you can actually look through your event logs, you can filter them out too. Like you see a whole bunch of informational stuff here, but if I wanted to actually find out, like if there were errors, especially with my hard disk, I can go and I can do a filter. So I can go view by, let's see, I can, let me add the filter, brain fart. I'm just brain farting it up today. Oh, here we go. Filter current log. So I can go to filter, I can say, hey, I just want errors. I want critical. That's what I want to see. And I can even go down deeper. I can say, oh, I want it for disk services, or I want it for this or that. So like check disk or something like that. I can do that, right? So I can select different things for what I want. And all these have a purpose. And so one of the things that I would do is I do either check disk or I do, IO traffic or something like that. And through doing the filter, I can go, oh, this is all my errors. Well, I plugged in an external CD-ROM drive recently, and obviously I've had some errors on that. Oh, look, it has a bad block. It has a bad block. Gee whiz, I wonder what that could be, right? I'm taking my current DVD collection and I'm doing digital copy of it. So, because who uses DVDs anymore? I own the DVDs, right? So I'm not doing piracy because I'm not sharing with anyone. I'm never going to share with anyone. But I'm making copies right now, and I've had a couple of DVDs fail during the copy process. Well, it's probably because I had bad blocks or a scratch on the DVD. Okay, as you see this error right here, this error also shows up for disks. Okay, so if I have a physical hard drive or even a solid state drive on my computer, and I think there may be a problem with that drive, like here's NTFS, corruption discovered in the file system structure on volume E. Well, volume E, what's volume E? Okay, go to my disk here, and go down here. And for me, E is the CD-ROM drive. No, I'm not too worried about that, right? So volume E, no big deal. It's a CD-ROM drive, I could care less. But if it was a hard drive, it's going to still list it in here. And believe it or not, your hard drive, your storage, gives you warnings before it goes dead. It doesn't just all of a sudden one day die. It gives you warnings. Okay, there's pieces of software that I just realized right now I'm showing you guys something and you can't even see it. So let me correct that real quick. Controls, sorry. So what I'm referring to is the event viewer. So what I did was to filter this, I went to filter current log and I told it I wanted critical and error. Okay, so on critical and error, I selected that and I filtered it, and you see, as I was describing, I had a CD-ROM with a bad block, and I had further down, if I scroll all the way down, I had NTFS errors, and the NTFS errors were related to the CD-ROM drive. And then I'm showing this again because I didn't realize I didn't have it on the wrong, or I didn't have it on the right screen. If I go down here and I look at E, that's my E volume, which is my CD-ROM drive. So, you know, hey, oh well, I don't care. But the same, as I was saying, the same errors will show up for your hard drive in the same place. Okay, so if I want to look at NTFS, I can go to filter again and I can go, hey, I just want to look at, NTFS issues. So if I go down here, here's my NTFS, right? Select that, hit OK, and now the only errors I'll see are related to NTFS. If I want to look at disk errors, I shouldn't currently have any, but if I wanted to, I could do this drop down. I could say all and unselect all so that NTFS is no longer selected. And I can go to disk, like disk 1 or disk whatever, if it were so listed. It shouldn't, because I don't have any problems with my disk, but or at least last time I checked I didn't. Disk quota, I don't have a disk quota. Let's do disk. Select those. I can select multiple, and as you see, as I said, I had no errors on my disk. Okay, but again, this is the area, and the Windows logs, and the event viewer is where you're going to find most of your stuff that may or may not be causing issues on your system. They've also, in the latest versions of Windows, they've actually expanded it out to where you can do hardware events, you can do events on Internet Explorer, you can do key management, things like that. So they have expanded out the capability. But the ones where you're going to find the most information is in your application, security, and system. These have been staples from the very beginning of Windows. And it is something that Microsoft has preached for years. It's something that me as a trainer has preached to my students for years. But you can lead a horse to water, you can't make him drink, right? So I know that some people watching this video, obviously not watching it live, but watching this video after the fact, when I post an archive of it, they'll hear me rant and rave about Event Viewer, and they'll still not use it. You know, again, as I said, out of 10 technicians, you know, maybe one uses it. You know, that's the first place that they're supposed to go. You know, and I can't tell you how much time you would save if you just went here and checked the event logs, like right off the bat. Anyway, I'm gonna cut it off now. Sorry about scratching my nose. I got this unruly facial hair growth because of the the good old prostate cancer awareness month and all that stuff. But anyway, I thank you very much for joining me tonight. I'm going to go ahead and cut it off now. I hear my wife rummaging around in the kitchen, so I'm going to go spend some time with the fam. But anyway, if you've made it all the way through the video, I very much appreciate it. If you've been watching at all, I much appreciate that as well. I do these live streams every Sunday and every Wednesday from 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'll continue doing them and hopefully eventually build an audience. But again, I thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have an awesome evening, and I wish you all a good night.